Hey there, community bankers, and welcome back to the Correspondent podcast, your go-to source for community banking content and resources. I'm your host, Madison Kaplinger, Marketing Associate for ICBB, and I'm here today with Chasity Bruce, one of our top customer service specialists. Say hi, Chasity.
Oh, don't you get me all buttered up over here. Hi, everyone. This is Chasity Bruce, Customer Service Specialist 3. Been here 7 years at ICBB.
So I've got Chasity here today, and coming up, you're going to hear a conversation I had with the team from First United Bank and Trust in Madisonville, Kentucky, who was named number 31 on the American Bankers Association's Best Banks to Work For list for 2022. So you're going to hear from them about the culture they've built that retains and engages all the wonderful people that they've hired in. But first, I wanted to get some insight from Chasity on what it takes to build a culture that keeps people in customer service departments, which tends to be a high turnover area. Actually, my younger sister is working as a bank teller right now, so I get stories texted to me pretty much daily about, difficult customers. So I could understand why it could potentially be a high turnover area.
That is actually really funny because my younger sister is a bank teller as
Really?
well. Yeah, so she'll call me on her lunch and be like, "You'll never guess what this guy said to me today. You'll never guess how they just threw their check at me today." And I'm like, calm down in your management classes.
Yeah, or she'll text me and be like, "Oh, they've implemented this policy." I'm like mentally preparing to be cussed out.
And she knows that I work on the correspondent end, and she'll be like, "So, hey, how would you do this?" And I'm like, maybe you should ask your supervisor.
So I can attest to this, and you can as well, having, did you say 6 or 7 years here?
Started in 2016, so
Coming up on 7.
Coming up on 7 years.
Yeah, so what in your view makes ICBB a great place to work, specifically in customer service?
Most definitely the leadership and the offering educational opportunities for your employees in customer service, because customer service does have a high turnover rate because it's a starting point. It's a foot in the door for individuals who want to get their leg in the banking world. And here at ICBB, they give us that education opportunity and they help build our knowledge and build our education background. And that does give you a good morale knowing that your leadership cares.
I know customer service, I know it's a little bit different on the correspondent end, but for a lot of community banks, customer service tends to be a high turnover department for the reasons we mentioned. It's foot in the door. It can be difficult some days. And it's an easy place to burn out as well. So in your experience, what are some of the best ways for management to prevent turnover and burnout in their service employees? And you touched on this a little bit already.
I'll definitely circle back to the education. I know in the banking world, there are certificates you can earn. There's banking schools that you can go to, and if your work will allow an education fund, a lot of that will be easy on your pocket. So I think that would help. I'm certain that would help. A big part of the turnover is just allowing them to attach those credentials on the end of their name, so they start to feel like they're an asset to the team.
So you were here when the pandemic hit then at ICBB. I was not. I started in 2022. So I'm curious, a major kind of common theme that we talked about with the team from First United Bank and Trust was flexibility and adaptability, and just how important that has always been, but I think we really saw a need for it once the pandemic hit. How did our customer service team adapt, and what did the customer service department kind of learn from that whole experience?
We adapted fairly easy. It was easy to migrate over. Everyone was provided with their own work from home materials, their own laptops, which was very, very generous of the bank to buy everyone their own individual laptop. So it made migrating over to a work from home morale. It was pretty easy. I mean, and it had no effect on our day-to-day operations because we do this every day. We already go ahead and talk to people via email, via phone. So it made no difference where we were sitting.
Mm-hmm. I'm kind of curious because I've seen both perspectives kind of in the banking world. There's, leadership that says like, oh, I don't care where you work as long as you get it done. And then there's leadership that says like, no, I need butts in chairs at the bank. And I mean, like there are employees that feel both ways, but there's been such such a demand for remote work among, positions where that's feasible. I know like a bank teller, you couldn't necessarily do that remotely, but a customer service department, there might be some flexibility there. Another thing that we talked about a lot with the First United Bank and Trust team was kind of building this culture where people come first, people over profit, people over, all these other things that can be really easy to prioritize when, you're looking at numbers. And even in my short time at ICBB, I feel like I've really experienced a people first culture. And so what are some ways that the customer service team fosters a people first culture internally? And how have you seen that pay off on the customer end?
We've actually always adapted that people first culture. Mm-hmm. And it's always been customer and employee first. Mm-hmm. So that's why our customer service department has already such a good morale back in the department, because everyone's happy. The customer's taken care of and the management team makes sure that we're happy. Some of us like to work from home. Some of us would rather have our butts in the chair. So I would like to say that really it hasn't changed. It's always been pretty great just knowing that we're first. But nothing's really changed.
And, I think when your customer service team is happy, when your people are happy, your customers are going to be better taken care of and they're going to be happy. And I know just from, talking to our customers and kind of being able to ask them about their experience with us, like your guys' names always come up. Our customers are like, oh, I called Chasity or I called Carol and they helped me solve this problem in like 5 minutes. And they've just had so far nothing but positive things to say.
What I've learned, I've always worked in the customer service industry since I started working at 16. And what I look at the customers as, that's my job. I mean, you are the reason why I am able to pay my mortgage and put my kids through private school and, pay my car off. I mean, like, it's important to me that they're happy and that they feel comfortable on the phone. And if they don't feel comfortable when they call and talk to me, they're not going to call back or they're going to move their business. So it's important that we're both happy. Yeah. And when you answer the phone with a positive tone in your voice and they're calling and they're having a worry, hey, I did this check, it just went wrong. Or I did this wire second time and it was an accident. They're calling with worry. And then when you answer that phone and you have a relaxing tone to your voice, it kind of helps them. It helps relieve that worry, just to know that not only are they going to get their problem solved, but they're going to have someone be nice to them on the phone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've, like I said, I've seen people in my family work customer service, and it's really hard to have that positive attitude when you're not happy at work, when you don't feel valued, when you feel like you're not being compensated fairly, when the culture around you is not positive.
It is a hard job to have when you're not a natural people person.
That's true too.
It is hard, but I don't think that should deter anyone from wanting to pursue customer service, because like I said, it is a good foot in the door. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've been in this department going on 7 years and I love it. I love all of the extra responsibilities. I know when people see customer service, behind my name, they're probably like, oh, she just processes files all day. That's all she does. When in reality, there's a lot to, in the banking world, there's a lot to customer service. It's not just sitting in a chair and clicking a button all day. There's a lot of brain power. I tell my husband all the time, I was like, your job may be physically demanding, but mine is, mentally demanding.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like the complexity of working with numbers. So it does make me happy.
That was Chasity Bruce, one of our customer service specialists. She is so wonderful, and I just want to thank her so much for participating. I think she gave a lot of great insight into what it takes to keep a great employee in your service department. So now I want to give you guys some time to hear from a leadership team that is doing that well. First United Bank and Trust in Madisonville, Kentucky was named number 31 on the American Bankers Association's Best Bank to Work For list in 2022. Now, there were 90 banks on that list from all over the country, so they made almost the top third of the best banks to work for last year. So let's hear some of their culture building and retention best practices, and hopefully there's something within those that you can learn from and take back to your community bank.
Start out, I'd just like for each of you to introduce yourselves, just with your name and your title.
I'm Jason Hawkins. I'm President and CEO of First United Bank.
Chris Finley, Executive Vice President and Chief Lending Officer of First United Bank.
Suzelle LeGrand, Executive Vice President, Chief Marketing Director.
Awesome. So first and foremost, I just want to congratulate you guys on being named to American Bankers Best Banks to Work For list in 2022. I know that's such a huge accomplishment. And you guys were number 31, if I remember correctly. Were you guys expecting to rank that high or to rank it all, or was that more of a pleasant surprise?
From my perspective, it was a very pleasant surprise. This was actually our first time in actually participating in the survey. And so honestly, we didn't go into it with any preconceived expectations of placement on the survey. We were just hoping to learn from it, obviously get some feedback on how employees felt about our organization. And so having that 31 ranking come in was extremely exciting.
Right, because there were 90 named, so that puts you in the top almost third of respondent banks.
And actually in banks with asset size less than 3 billion, we were at 22.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's exciting. That's so awesome.
One
So,
of one of one of
I'm
the
sorry, go
things
ahead.
one of the things that we have done for several years is to try to have employee surveys and at least get feedback from our employees about how they feel about us, management, the organization, direction, all of those types of things. And participating in the Best Banks to Work For survey was our way of doing that in 2022. Just because it was the survey was out there. It's obviously established. It's certainly private, and it was a great way for us to get information and feedback. And honestly, that was our biggest goal going into it, was really to just get good, solid feedback and to have decent participation with our people in the survey itself. And we had 90 something percent. I was going to say 97%, I believe, participation in the survey. And so we were just floored by that participation, because when we usually have conducted surveys of our own, that participation level has been more in the 70% range.
That's really good. I think most HR managers would kill for that kind of participation level. What do you think it is that made the difference?
Basically, I feel like because it was a established ABA program is one thing. So they were sure that it was going to be confidential. I think that's always one of the things when you do surveys, is that little hesitation, especially if you're doing an internal survey. And this was not internal, this was external. So I think the comfort level of that, and we really talked it up, and we wanted them to tell us what they think. It was a very comprehensive survey. So we did get a lot of good information and feedback from it.
When I think our employees, they really trust us, and our culture, the culture we've built, we really embrace and value the feedback that we get. And we take action when we get feedback. And so we learned a lot of things that we're doing well, but I also think, there's a few things that we identified through the survey we could improve on. And we've already done that really in a short period of time after receiving the information and analyzing it.
I'm really glad that you guys are able to act on that kind of feedback. And that seemed to be a common theme in, the write-up that was featured on you guys on the best banks to work for list, is that kind of responsiveness. But before I touch on that, could you tell me a little bit about your institution, your community, your market? You guys are in Madisonville, which is Western Kentucky. Is that correct?
That is correct. Our headquarters is Madisonville, Kentucky, which is in Hopkins County. And we actually serve 3 other counties as well. Ohio County was our first entrance outside of Hopkins County, and that we have a location in Beaver Dam, Kentucky. We then put another location in Crittenden County, which is Marion, Kentucky. And then in the last couple of years, we've actually put in 2 locations in Davis County, which is Owensboro. And so
Okay.
we are generally serving a 4-county area from a deposit perspective, but our lending presence actually exceeds those geographical boundaries. And so Chris can probably speak better to this than I, but I think we loan in 30 plus Kentucky counties. So we have a pretty good presence definitely on the western half of the state for sure.
That's a pretty good footprint, I think, for you guys. So, in your view, and you touched on this a little bit before, but in your view, what makes First United Bank a great place to work?
I think that honestly, our people make the difference, and we do value our employees. We have a few years back, we set aside a number of our core purpose and core values. And one of those that we specifically identified was valuing employees. And I do think that we do a very good job of taking care of our people. That comes from, being a family atmosphere. It also is based upon, we constantly analyze pay rates. We make certain that we are very competitive in what we're offering. I think that we have a very detailed benefit package as well. And so we're making certain that, that all of the things that we're offering there are very competitive so that we don't have any barriers from a compensation perspective in dealing with people. But then I think that one of the things that we do as a community bank is that we serve others. And I think that our employee base buys into that we are, service first oriented in how we handle things. And I think that, comes from all levels of the organization, but I think that that's created a culture that says, we want to make a difference in the communities that we serve. How would you all add to that?
I also think, our board of directors is so supportive in us taking care of our people, and they're very generous, in many ways. And, our executive team, our leadership team, we're very seasoned with experience here. And, we all practice servant leadership, and we try to promote that with, our mid-level managers. And, we're very transparent with our people. And, Jason mentioned the family atmosphere, and we get a lot of positive feedback from our employees that come from other banks or other organizations about how we make them feel. And I think we make it a priority to treat people with dignity and respect, in all situations.
And as it's been said, our employees, that's our number one asset, taking care of them. If we take care of our employees, they in turn are going to take care of our customers. And so it really does have an impact on the bottom line. by taking care of the employees. And we do have an employee appreciation committee. You know, the executive team and leadership is not on that committee. We have it at the employee level with maybe a mid-level manager being the team lead on that, so that they can come up with good ideas and what they want to do and what we can do. So we do things throughout the year to help our employees stay engaged and show that we care about them.
That's awesome. You guys have touched on a lot of things that I think are important that I want to really touch on. But the thing that you started with talking about compensation benefits and making sure that those things are not very barriers, excuse me. Um, that seems to be a common theme throughout, you know, other banks I've talked to that are great to work for. For example, I interviewed another bank that's a customer of ours on the list in West Virginia, and you know, they touched on that as well. And it seems to be, you know, the key, one of the biggest keys to making a great place to work is uh, making sure people feel like they're being compensated fairly. But yet, it also seems to be, especially in this economic climate, where I think a lot of boards would give the most pushback. So, what would be to the expense? I mean, so what would be your kind of response to that, to any pushback that, you know, you might anticipate receiving?
You know, our board has, as Chris, I think, identified, has been extremely generous. The board's posture on it is that we want to make certain that whatever we're doing with our people is that we are paying them fairly, that we're compensating adequately, and that we're doing what we need to do from all of the ancillaries, including training and everything else. And so they have given us the ability, you know, to spend honestly quite a few dollars in making certain that we're keeping up with the times. Now, we generally don't do things that are related to, you know, cost of living type of adjustments or anything like that. But what we're doing is trying to compare ourselves not only with the industry in terms of other banks, but also what our potential competition is in the employment market, you know, and making certain that we're keeping up and that we're analyzing things fairly. And so the other thing that we've tried to do with that compensation analysis is not only understanding where minimum pay rates need to be in comparison to other industries, but we've also tried to make certain that as we're adjusting that lowest tier, that we're not forgetting that tier that's just above them. And so we've tried to make sure that there's movement all across the organization as a result of that.
One thing I thought of sitting here, and Suzelle said our employees are our greatest asset, and we don't just say that, we back it up. And you know, we never want to lose a customer over, you know, pricing. We always want to maintain that relationship, but we're not always the cheapest rate. And in a similar fashion, we don't want to lose employees over compensation. We're not always going to be the highest pay rate, but you know, we look at it from a relationship perspective as well, and you know, trying to be fair. But then, you know, people also see value in working here when they could leave and go make more money somewhere else, but they choose to be here because of the culture and, you know, the entire package.
The other thing that I'll point out as well is that we do a lot of promoting from within. And so in looking at our organization, I mean, all of us in leadership started at much, much lower levels in the organization and have grown into our roles. And so that's, I think, speaks volumes from our board's perspective, and they allow that to be done. And they're all about training and growing our people.
Yeah, for sure. And I think those are definitely things that anyone who is currently seeking a job in this market right now would be very, very excited to hear because it's not quite as common as it should be to take that posture and that attitude toward employees. So I can only imagine how grateful, your employees and your recent hires even are for that.
The other thing that we have that, again, several other banks, may have this as well, but we do have an employee stock ownership program. And so we're able to, offer to someone that's coming to try to join us the ability to, in effect, be an owner of the bank very soon, just because of their participation in that employee stock ownership plan.
That's a really great perk to offer.
It definitely is, and
Mhm.
it certainly will enhance their retirement, and it has already enhanced a lot of people's balances because of the growth of the stock over the years.
So another thing that you touched on earlier was that valuing feedback and valuing suggestions from your employees and enacting those. And the write-up in American Banker touched on that um, as well. So how have you seen that kind of lead to some valuable insight or changes in your institution? How have you seen that um, openness to suggestions really pay off for you guys?
One of the things that, and I'll talk about from a new hire perspective, and then we'll talk about a little bit further to answer your question. Every new hire that comes in the door, I meet with them the first day that they're here, their first meeting, as a matter of fact, and I tell them we want their ideas. I really emphasize we have no pride of ownership. We want to work smarter and not harder, and that we want to make certain that if somebody's coming to us with ideas based upon previous experience that can enhance what we're doing, that we want to make sure that they bring those to the table. In addition to that, I instruct all of them to ask the question, why do we do this? And I am telling them that I don't want an answer of that's because it's the way we've always done it. So that they need to dig further into that. And so I think that each of us, you know, we have kind of, taken the approach that, who best to give suggestions in the bank than the people that actually deal with it every day. It's easy for us as executives to sit around the table and say, well, this is the way we think it ought to be done. But we need to get feedback from, everybody that's on the front lines to say, is this what's happening in the real world? It's kind of like being in academia and being a professor and teaching theory. And theory is great, but what's happening in actual practice? And so we're trying to get that feedback. And honestly, we just got out of a meeting speaking about how to make sure we're getting good feedback right now.
That's a really great approach to take. And I think that it sounds like that works on two levels as far as your willingness to disrupt yourself allows you to constantly be improving. And it also creates a culture where your employees feel like, they're valued. I think a lot of employees get into a place where they feel like their input doesn't matter and they're just, doing what they're told and keeping their head down, and that's kind of disheartening for them, and it seems like you guys have really gotten out ahead of that possibility and that pattern and really opened up the floor for your employees to really take ownership in your institution.
That's our goal anyway.
I mean, I can only imagine what that's done for your engagement and your retention, and it has to be, a huge impact.
Speaking of engagement, Suzelle, do you want to talk a little bit about? Suzelle was on valued employees team over the last couple of years, and talk about our engagement assessment a little bit.
Yeah, one thing we came up with is that, we do the annual performance reviews with our employees, supervisors, talking with the employees. And we wanted to do more than that. We wanted it to be also a mid-year check-in, so that it's more informal, and really it's where the employee kind of tells us where they are with their career, what they would like to be involved in, where they need training, what does their career path look like, how engaged are they, and things of that we ask them. And then we set aside time with the immediate supervisor to talk about those things. So it's not that we're talking performance necessarily, but what does that employee want to express? What's on their mind? And just allowing that, kind of to come together. And it is a time to check in on goals that were set, for the new year. Also, where are we? What's changed? What do we need to look at, the last 6 months of the year? And it's just really a more of again, an informal conversation with that employee where, you can speak openly and have some direction over your own career too, and what's on your mind and how we can accomplish these things together. So last year was the first year that we actually implemented the engagement assessment, and I think it went over very well. We got, again, right after that, we did a quick little survey. We do Survey Monkeys and things like that to get the employees, how did you like this process? What could we do differently? What questions did we not ask that you wish we had have asked, and things like that, so we keep improving. I feel like it's a good thing. And from the consensus of the employee from that first survey that we had from them and getting the feedback, they liked it as well.
That sounds like such a wonderful process, and I think that's huge as far as communicating to your employees that you're not only interested in what they are producing for your organization, but you're interested in their growth and their goals as well. I think that also has to have a pretty major impact on your retention. I think, today's job seekers are kind of coming into the market saying, not only here's what I can do for you, but what can you do for me and for my career? And they're expecting a little bit more in that sense. So it seems like you've been responsive to that.
And it also helps us, have, not that I'm going to call it difficult conversation, but it also helps us have conversations where somebody might say, well, my goal is to be in the president's office. And we'll say, well, that's great that you have that goal, but let's talk about some things that you're going to have to do along the way, some additional training, some additional responsibilities. Let's talk about how you can achieve and get there one day, but know that that probably is not going to happen in the next 3 months because of this list of things that you need that we can work on together, I guess, if you will.
Right. And then that's another level of transparency. So no one, is feeling like there's this other XYZ reason that I'm being, kept from whatever goal this is that I have.
Well, and we realize too that, the workforce today it's very competitive, and we know that other employers are potentially also, reaching out and talking with our really good employees and wanting them on their team. So, we've got to do everything we can to be transparent and to, we want to retain the best talent that we can and that we have. And we want them to have those conversations early on if they are being approached by another employer or, thinking about going elsewhere. A lot of them through the pandemic, remote work, a lot of them see perks into that. So we've had to be more flexible in looking at those things as well.
And that flexibility is kind of another theme that I picked up on in the write-up that was shared about you guys in American Banker. It told a story about your all employee meetings that were initially in person, and then when you started growing, now you have over 90 employees, that became difficult. And of course, the pandemic, it became uh, remote. And between that and, your openness to feedback and to suggestions, it seems that you guys have become really adaptive where your staff is concerned. And I'm sure you're aware, you can't overemphasize how important that is in this climate with everything having changed so much in the past uh, few years. But how would you do you think that that's always been true for your organization? Have you always been this flexible, adaptive kind of entity? And just how have you seen that play out?
From my perspective, I think that we always um, would like to say that we're adaptive, um, but I think that we have grown, and as we've learned how to deal with things. I mean, um, we were not prepared for the pandemic. We were not prepared for, people being at home and, AB teams and, drive through only type of stuff and having to work remotely. And so what we have had to deal with over the past 2 years has made us so much stronger. The past 3 years really has made us so much stronger as a management team and as an organization because we have had to experience challenges together.
Yeah, definitely. I think the pandemic was this kind of baptism by fire for a lot of people and a lot of management teams, ours included. So do you think that that really was like a wake up call or kind of sped up your progress as far as,
I
flexibility goes?
think it was a catalyst.
Mm.
I think that it caused us to think outside of the box to challenge some of the norms that we may have been accustomed to. And honestly, with the Great Resignation and all of those things, it challenges us to think about how we approach employees and what we need to be doing to make sure that we value people. So yeah, it is definitely a catalyst, and I think we did a great job in responding to that. To be honest with you.
So when this, what we're calling the Great Resignation began taking place, did you guys see your organization impacted by that at all? Or were you already in a place that your employees were saying, no, this is a place I want to stay? Or was it kind of a mix of both?
We honestly, if you look at the initial pandemic and through 2020, we basically had nobody leave in that process. We started to see a little bit of turnover in 21 and not much in 22. And, I think our biggest challenge has not been necessarily people leaving, but it's been being able to recruit and, those to join our organization. We've been growing at a pretty good clip over the last few years and going into the Owensboro market. We've had to literally staff two separate branches and add some support services for those branches as well. And so that has created at least some degree of challenge in making sure that we're able to recruit. And so that I think though that I think it's always been there a little bit for us, but I feel like we've done a great job dealing with it the last several years.
And our turnover significantly reduced, the last 3 years compared to
Previous,
the time prior to that.
that's correct.
That's impressive since, you'd expect the opposite just societally. That's really great. So you touched earlier on, your community involvement and, volunteer work. I think the photo shared of your team um, in American Banker was actually from them volunteering building homes. And, you mentioned that being kind of a, I don't want to say selling point, but something that really seems to bond your team together and is part of what makes First United Bank a great place to work. So, can you tell me about some of the, volunteer and community efforts that your bank has been a part of?
One of the things that I want us to do as a community bank is to support the community that supports us. And so part of that comes through volunteer efforts from participation. One of the things that we pride ourselves on is there's a community event going on, especially in our home market in Hopkins County. We're learning how to do that in our other markets. But if there's an event going on, not only do we show up, but we show out for the event and we try to be there. If you look at any of the service clubs and organizations in our communities, very likely we have somebody that's on those service organizations, and often we see people in leadership roles. We try to encourage volunteerism. We try to encourage serving others. We even have a day that employees can get paid effectively to go volunteer outside the organization. And so we're trying to make sure that we plug people in wherever possible. I think we've got, I don't know how many service hours. We calculated it at one point, and it was a staggering number of how many service hours that we've done. I can tell you that in our home market, if you look at the Rotary Club, the Kiwanis Club, or the Lions Club, most of those organizations probably wouldn't exist and do the work that they're doing without somebody from our team being a part of that. And so I'm just applaud our people for wanting to make our communities better.
Well, one unique thing that we do as well is that our employees have the opportunity to payroll deduct $5 a pay period. And for that, we wear jeans on Fridays. And then at the end of the year, each market, we tally up how much we've collected from the employee donations, and the employees get to vote on what organizations they would like to donate their funds to. And this year, it was probably very close to $10,000 that we were able to donate across all of our different markets. So again, in employees in each market, we usually divide up three or, like in Hopkins County, I think it was like $8,000 that we collected, and we chose 4 organizations and gave each one $2,000. And it makes a big impact to those organizations because they don't even know this is coming. And then we present it, or we try to present it on Giving Tuesday. And, we post pictures and things like that with our employees actually handing the check over to the organization. So again, we try to not only get out there ourselves and do the work and the volunteerism, but we also give monetarily as well from our own pockets.
And that's the thing that amazes me every year is this is employee donations. This is not the bank writing a check. It's really employees that have contributed year long. And we've been able to really impact a lot of organizations that way.
Well, I'm really glad you guys have been able to make that impact, and I can only imagine that that's, had quite an impact on, the culture of your bank internally. Can you speak to that a little bit? Do you think that focus on the community and volunteerism and giving has really shaped your guys' culture?
from my perspective, it enhances our culture so much because, I view every employee as a salesperson of the bank. And every employee, whether they're realizing it or not, they're out selling. And so, but we're constantly, I'm sure all of us can tell stories of the questions that we answer at the ball field or at the grocery store or, wherever we are, because people recognize us from the impacts that we're making in the community. And, I think that that's been a huge key to our success in growing our deposit base. We're the market share leader in Hopkins County. We're the deposit market share leader in Ohio County, and we're growing in our other two markets. And so I think that that's what resonates with people is they're seeing, that not only are we there to provide a product and a service, but we're also there to share the resources that we've been blessed with back in our communities.
The question that I kind of want to end out on with you guys is, from all of your experience and all of your successes, and you can each answer this individually if you'd like. What advice would you give to other community bank leaders hoping to improve their workplace culture, maybe their employee engagement, retention, their, responsiveness to their labor market overall? What advice would you share with them on taking steps to do that?
I'd say it starts with listening. I think it has to be an open dialogue. Things that worked, 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 30 years ago don't necessarily work the same way today. And so I think that you have to be able to listen to your people. You have to be able to, evaluate where you need to change and not be scared of making a change, even if it's not the perfect change at that particular time. You have to be willing to take the necessary steps and then continue to tweak that going forward as that needs to happen. But it all starts with listening. And it can't be, about, somebody sitting in an office, making an edict that says that we're all going to do this. That it has to be, a management by walking around and learning from people.
I think all people want to add value and be valued. So, I think improving culture and maintaining culture, you have to genuinely value people and create opportunities for them to add value to your organization. And, Jason mentioned listening, and, you have to take it even a step further than that and, take action with the things that you hear and the things that you learn. And, people will always remember how you made them feel, not necessarily what you say or do. And so, just keeping those things, at the forefront, but definitely all starts with people.
And in summary, I'm just going to kind of finish off. I mean, I'm going to ditto everything that Jason and Chris have already said, but to just summarize it up, it's you treat people the way you want to be treated, whether it's an employee, whether it's a customer, whoever it is. We want to build relationships, again, with our employees and our customers, and it's all about the people.
Well, I just want to thank you guys so much for your time and for sitting down to talk to me today. Before I let you go, is there anything we haven't touched on that you'd like to add or that you think is that you think would be important to the conversation?
I don't have anything else to add, Madison. We appreciate your time and thank you for listening to us and letting us, be involved in this.
When we appreciate the relationship we have with, I still say Bankers Bank, but especially from my experience on the loan side and the group we work with, it's a top-notch group, and it's allowed us to fuel some of our loan growth. And, it's nice to have an outlet to help fund some of our large customers when we need it. So, we really enjoy the relationship. It means a lot to us in our bank.
Well, thank you guys so much for your time today and for this conversation. I think it's going to be really valuable to a lot of other community banks who, might be struggling in this area. I think they're going to get a lot of value and insight out of what you guys had to say. So thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Absolutely.
Very nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you and appreciate everything.
Thank you guys so much for listening, and I hope you've gotten some value from this conversation to take back to your community bank. Make sure to follow or subscribe to The Correspondent wherever you get your podcasts and turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode. See you next time.